Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, now they both work.
Like Clement says, we are not a cooperative, but we are working with cooperative principles. So we just will explain in our tour to the Syndicate. And first we want to introduce ourselves. Robert is working with projects in the Syndicate. He is also architect. He is, I would call him as kind of satellite of our regional counseling, and I'm a part of the regional counseling. So we just educate counseling groups to be able to making their own projects, to making syndicate projects. We're talking about financial stuff and the regularity of the syndicate and legal forms and all the stuff, and then we just one part of the syndicate. Like I said, from the regional counseling, and that's a development that we have the last years that we just have regional groups that are teaching to others how the syndicate works, how legal forms in this construction works, and that's our background. And like I said, Robert is working with the group as an architect, and he will say something also about the projects he is working with and some other aspects of the architect aspects.
Just to add quickly, like we're the regional counseling of the Berlin-Brandenburg region, and there's other regional counseling other part of Germany.
Yes. And I will start by the goals of the syndicate. And this is one picture of one of our general meetings as start picture, and we will say later on what is the structure of the syndicate about. So the goals of the syndicate are affordable and decommodified living, and that means not for profit living and not living space for making profit. Decommodified living is our goal. And together we want to live in collective property without private ownership. That's the goal. And we have some kind of solidarity transfer. We will say something about it later. And it's like the others mentioned, there is some kind of redistribution of capital inside the system. It's not about profit going outside to third party. It's staying inside, and we have also some mechanisms between the projects to redistribute capital inside the network. And the network is also a goal, building up a strong network between the collectives of housing and also between supporters. It's not a closed shop. The syndicate has some open structures and they are very important for us, some open structures where people can participate. They are important because if we want a growing network developing, then we just can't work with the people who are inside just only, because they have their own interest being inside to let things stay how they are. So we need a third part who is also controlling and also just having a stake to say, okay, we want to grow, we want more projects in the network, and we want more affordable living inside the network. Some figures of this network. In the moment you said 120, it's not right. There are some project initiatives, and there are also some new projects coming, but now the network of houses are 113 houses. Now 17 in Berlin. 2 weeks ago we had the 17th project in Berlin, a new project. Around about 88,000 square meter living and workspace. It's not only living, it's not only flats. There are also workspace projects. We will have one in the part of Robert's presentation. Around 2,500 habitats in whole Germany. It's at about a capital value about 130 million euro, and 30 million are independent from the bank. So, still my part, huh?
Yes.
Some principles. Like I said, there are autonomous, there's self-governmental projects. There's no secondary purchase of selling of buildings or land. So then long-term affordable rents and costs, common support of new projects, and it's more bottom-up urban development, but we also have projects on the land. It's not only in the city.
Okay, now I will explain the structure, how it works. So it all starts with the group that forms. The group will form like an association. And later, when the project is realized, this group that has given itself the form of a tenants association will be owner 51% of their real estate. Then this tenants association also becomes the member of the Mietshäusersyndikat association, which is like a big association of all. It's like the umbrella association of all tenants associations. And this Mietshäusersyndikat association is 100% shareholder of a limited liability company. In German, it's a GmbH. That is then again owner of each project, but with a kind of a minority of only 49%. And why do we have this construction? On the one hand, out of the history of the syndicate, we have a very strong autonomy of each project. So all questions concerning the development and also the day-to-day management of the building is completely in the hand of the tenants. While all economic aspects concerning like capitalization and trade with the real estate is kind of in the hand of the network. This is really to kind of rule out any speculation with the real estate, and also to secure that the commodity, the assets stay in the network. I jump back again. What you can see here in this graphic is, in a way, that, and this is I think a core principle of the syndicate, that you always have the individual interest of each project and the tenants, and the interest of the whole, of the whole network, kind of in each project and also in the network. So it's always like a negotiation between common interest and individual interest, while securing a very strong project autonomy. About the funding. The syndicate projects are 100% loan financed. There is no private capital invested, like personal capital. And how does it go? Because to get a loan from the bank, you need to bring a little bit of your own money. But the own money that you bring in the syndicate network is not the private money of the people who join the network, but it's kind of crowdsourced. So here we see one project in Berlin, the structure of the
Mariendorfer Weg.
What? Yeah, Mariendorfer Weg, it's called. The structure of the direct loans, which is the 20% represented here. Unfortunately, there's one column missing, but basically it's 152 loans, and they are sourced from the network of acquaintances and friends. And this can be very small loans, starting I think with 500 euros. And actually, also to have to secure in a way the democracy of the projects, we the group always make sure that they also have a wide distribution of the micro credits, so that there's not so that not such a big dependency on one credit giver.
1 second.
Yeah.
We have to say, go back again. Who are these persons that are friends, that are family, that is supporters from the projects, that are other initiatives, that are also projects out from the network. So there are different kinds of institutions giving loans to the single project. So that's the range of people who are just supporting the projects.
And we already talked about it. Like, I think this is very important part of the whole network, is that we have like the solidarity transfer mechanism. It starts with 10 cents per square meters, like which is added to the rent in each project. That goes into the solidarity fund. And as the projects kind of pay back their loans, this solidarity, this amount of the solidarity transfer is slightly increasing, like each year. And what is the solidarity fund used for? It's now at the moment it's mainly used for new acquisitions, so that the syndicate limited can become shareholder in new projects, which is in Germany like at 12,500 euros.
No, it's the core capital are 25,000 euros, yes. And the part from the syndicate are
the half, yeah.
The half, yeah.
Exactly. But also it's being used for like to support like the structure and finance the like, for example, the general meetings.
That's our next part. What you can see is one of our general meetings, and what is there happening is that a new project is presented, and after the presentation, the people are asked if they just okay with it that this project will join. You can see is so the general meetings have to prepare themselves with business plans and all the stuff. So it's if you look at this, then it's a very big education project also. The people learning how to manage real estate, but not on the base of they are investors. They are some kind of investors
yes.
in the network, but they are not like the normal investors we just talking about, want to make profit or something. So it's a real education program of learning how to manage real estate, and in the end, to say, okay, this project will join or will not join. So
and how to develop real estate.
And how to develop, yes. Organizing the syndicate is the point. So, like I mentioned, there is a general meeting for the system. We have to divide into system organization and different kind of other organizational aspects. The system organization is run by a general meeting for 3 to 4 times a year. Then there is some kind of mailing list where we just communicate a lot about problems and also about the new projects, opportunities, and also about politics. And a very big role is coming up the last years with the regional counseling. So no project is coming to the general meeting without the regional counseling, without the counseling by other people from the network. So there you can't see only the formal structure, you have to see the informal preparing of this process. That's a very important thing, to say, okay, there is so much communication in before, and there's some kind of counseling to coming to this point, and that's a very big point in the network.
Yeah, basically, to sum it up, like a group who is interested to form a project comes to the regional counseling, like presenting their idea. Maybe they already have a house or a piece of land they want to develop, or they don't have it, they just have the intention. And then the regional counseling is like counseling them and like giving them support and preparing them in a process like to go then when they are ready, when they have a house, when they have like the finances to realize the project, to prepare them to go to the general meeting and to like propose the project to the big network.
Yes. And who's regional counseling? It's also, like I said before, it's totally important to have some kind of open structures. So also the regional counseling is everyone who likes the idea, who want to support it. And the regional counseling is deciding how they just manage with people who are interested and want to join this process. So there's also some open door Every regional councilling is deciding who we manage with, but there are some open doors for people who say, okay, we want to support the idea. And that's very important. It's about the idea to support, and we just like to support it, and so we can maybe joining the regional counseling. And the other part, we said there is supporting about direct loans and all this stuff. Decisions were made in the syndicate. It's about the management of the limited, we just mentioned before. It's adopting new projects, the change of structure. We're always discussing about the solidarity transfer. It's always a big construction site, how we manage the solidarity transfer, because we have to talk about legal forms, we have talk about taxes, because we don't want to collect solidarity funds and then paying taxes for it. It's not so. So we just have to talk about taxes and the change of this political surrounding of the network. We just had to manage also some kind of changes in the legal system of Germany about the direct loans. So we just had to make lobby about the direct loans, and I think we just made it very good. So because of our work, they didn't change it so hard because of our network. So, and there was in this process there was some kind of Lex Syndikat that they developed, changed it later, make it more open, and it wasn't Lex Syndikat in the end. But we just driven a lobby by the network. So that's also something we have to do. Change of the guidelines of our guidelines, like I said. And this is all made by the decision-making body, and now the question is also how to decide with all these people. So, mention this audience will decide together with a new deal of a project or something like that, and how you make it.
You have to imagine on a general meeting there's like 2 or 3 or 4 times as many people as are here, and basically in one day they take decisions on like on new acquisitions and like serious economic decisions.
So, like I mentioned before, you see a big cloud there. What's that? You know. So okay, there's a question, suggestion. Say, okay, we have a question. We need an answer. So to imagine that all is made by formal stuff, forget it. Yeah, that's not all made by formal decisions. The first thing is we discuss much on different kind of forums, local, not only the region, the regional councilings. And the first step is to think about actions, what we have to do with it. And then there are some formal decisions making in the body we just mentioned before the general meeting. So forget it that everything is a formal decision process. There are much of informal institutions in this network, and they are very important. And at the meeting, we have some kind of common steps. It's a grassroots democracy we have there. And the decision is, okay, there are some moderators, they are asking, are you fine with it? Totally fine. Have you doubts? Have you heavy doubts? I stay with you, but I'm not taking part. Yeah? And then there's this hard veto, where this we take very serious about this veto. And then maybe there's a second round to ask why you have the veto, and trying to discuss a little bit more about it. And if it's coming hard, we have to say, okay, next general meeting.
Yeah, basically, one person can block a decision. And it's very interesting, but it's I think, but you have a very, really high responsibility if you use that veto.
Yeah.
And because you're blocking like the whole process in a big network. But actually, it really works, and it also means that before a decision is taken, like this decision has to be prepared really well. So like it has to be communicated to the group really well. That like you have to communicate your proposal really well. So and before we take the decision, there's always like a discussion process, like mediating, like the pros and cons.
Yeah, and the general meeting, I said before, there are open doors. The general meeting are supporters also. There are the projects have to be part of the general meeting. They have one vote, and maybe some project initiatives or other associations are also part of this network. Our regional counseling, where I am coming from, and our satellite Robert. So we just also have a regional meeting with the regional projects from the region of Berlin-Brandenburg and Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. And we have also a mailing list. We have a mailing list for initiatives that just want to join the network and searching for houses. Want to stay in touch. We have some proposals sometimes. Our group is, there are different aspects we have, or different backgrounds we have. We're coming from initiatives, we are interested in the network, want to make housing projects, or also political aspects that we just say, okay, that's a good frame to discuss housing policy in Berlin. Okay, Robert, projects.
Yeah, now we will jump into a project.
The first pictures of one project.
Yes. Many projects as leader in Berlin, they are kind of, it all started mainly with like being like former squads, and this is actually also where the Mietshäusersyndikat network is coming from, and this idea. So this is like these kind of projects. But we, since the network and the idea is expanding, we also have been developing new projects in the recent years. And I think some of them, they're also like interesting architecturally. And I think there's a lot of, in a way, similarities, like structurally, to the projects shown in Zurich. I mean, I would say the main difference is scale. Like our projects are much more small scale. And also my occupation as an architect is like, there's a lot of work like in the detailing, not so much in the architectural detailing, but more like how you make that, like how you work with the groups and how you discuss things. And so the main objectives of the projects are like low cost construction and refurbishment to guarantee low rents. And also like this is something that we bring in as architects but also the group with their programs is thinking about like public interfaces, and also like each project also gives something back to the city. I think also want to say something about affordability, because I think affordability is like a term that you can stretch quite a bit. And I guess if we talk about affordability in Berlin, it's different than to talk about affordability in Zurich, because also in Berlin the incomes are much, much lower. And I think the sad thing is that Germany is a very rich country, but what we actually can see is like that the middle class, especially the low middle class, are getting poorer and poorer. So we have like a situation in Berlin, when we talk about affordability, we talk about rents between 5 or 6, maximum 7 euros per square meter that people can afford from this part of the population. While like now the rent level is has risen like really above 10 euros. So we have a huge gap between basically what people can afford and what the market is doing at the moment. So, like, what kind of methods do we apply as architects in this process? I think, like, of course, the main objective is to have kind of a process-oriented design and like an intensive, oh, there's an N missing, cooperation with the groups who are the clients. Another objection is like, or a method is, in order to have really like kind of low rents and low costs, is to make maximum use of what is being there. Really, like, especially if we refurbish a building, we check everything that's there, like maybe, yeah, okay, what can we still use? And the third, and I think it's also an aspect that we have seen in the cooperatives in Zurich, is like lowering costs through like the sharing of resources and also like space sharing. So I think I like this project quite a lot. It's quite new. It's not finished yet, and you won't see any architectural drawings, but the story of it is quite nice. This is a kind of like an autonomous, self-organized youth club in a small town north of Berlin, in Neuruppin. And they have this youth center in the middle of the city, but they were about to be kicked out. So here you see a punk concert. This is like their old place. And actually they managed, out of this crisis situation, to move on and to improve, actually, to go one level up. This is like the T-shirt that they produced to kind of support their campaign. And yeah, this is kind of the funny take of this group. You see like this kind of black bloc style, but in a suit, and in the Molotov cocktail is made out of banknotes. Because basically they managed to buy the old railway station of the town and turn it into like a living space, but also like an autonomous youth center. This is a new build project, and what is in Berlin-Prenzlauer Berg. And what is particular about that project is basically it's like one flat only. It's like it's almost 1,000 square meters, and technically it's one flat. And the group who realized that project came to us, and they were it's like quite extreme. In the beginning, they only wanted to have one kitchen, and they wanted like every room to be the same. And we said like, okay, right, some nice ideas, but like from our experience with groups, I think we have to bring in a little bit more diversity. So in the end, and we said like, okay, you need like a diversity of collective spaces. You cannot only have one, because there will be conflicts, and you need spatial facilities to move around. And
I have some anecdote from the regional counseling. I have to say that's not the first point of the group, because before the group they are searching in the whole area for a house, and they just wanted to go into an existing house, saying, okay, we want to use a house that is existing on the market, and we just want to take it out of the market. So they started with this idea, and there again the regional counseling and our activities we just said, okay, we have to talk with groups about building new houses. And in discussion, also the group changed a little bit, They said, okay, maybe it's an option for us to build. And also another anecdote, how they started. They came to our regional counseling, and they said, we want to make a project. We are naive, but we are motivated. So, and that's their first name, They said, okay, our project name is Naive and Motivated. So they started with this group, and later on there came this ground and Robert again.
Maybe like you can see already, it's like on the railway, and it was like a very small strip of land, actually, like which is like a piece of land which is not very interesting for like commercial developers, and also because it's like on the railway, it also like was another reason why the land was cheap. Actually, like we had also some trouble with legalizing living there, because like at some point, like when we almost got the building permits, like the kind of environmental assessment office said like, well, like this is too loud, people can't live there. But what you also see, there's this old wall like sprayed with graffiti, and we decided to leave that wall because it actually is a sound barrier. And we also have like all the living, like the bedrooms in the lower 2 floors, and the community space on top, with a lot of, it's basically huge loft space. But in the end, here you can see the relationship to the railway. And this was even like published in a publication by like the Berlin Senate, by the government, as a kind of a best practice project. Here you can still see like this 3 floors, and the lower floors are like all the room, and in the back you have all the communal facilities, like additional kitchens, but also bathrooms and storage. And also to bring in, and it's like oriented to the south, like all the rooms are like south facing. and they're mainly the same size, but we also had like some smaller rooms, which you can see on the left, because also like people with children moving in, and we wanted also to have like kind of extra spaces if maybe someone wants to work and wants to have a small office or like rooms for children. And actually, like to bring in light to the depth of the building, it's also quite deep. We introduced like small patios. But like I think the like interesting, which for me always was like kind of very interesting part of this project is like how does it really relate to the streets and to the public space? Because actually like it doesn't really have a facade, this building, because like you have like this long plot which goes like like deep into the side, and you have like the common space on top. But the group also was we not only want to have a common space for ourselves, we also want to have like kind of an open space for the neighborhood. So they have a project space there, and then what you see in the front, the kind of semi-transparent facade. This is like. Yeah, they organize like an informal bar there every week, and they have do a kitchen. So they, and also like if you're an initiative from the neighborhood, you can approach the group and say like, well, we need a space for meeting, and you can use that space. And so you have like this transition, like this contact zone between the street and the building, which is kind of like a space of negotiation. And here you can see also this works as a kind of a lighthouse in the night. You know, this box is like lit up, and kind of is inviting. There's like something going on up there. This is like a picture of the loft. Maybe like also like how we work is kind of interesting, because like our engineers, like they wanted actually like to introduce some huge wooden beams that would have been super expensive, and they would have ruined the cost and also a little bit the design. And then like, so like well, like, what should we do about it? And we didn't really like wanted to introduce a column into the middle of the space. But then we had like this idea, why don't we just go to the forest and like search a tree and have like a different, and what we did, like this is kind of, so this kind of became like a design element, but it's like kind of, yeah, came about in the process. And like maybe like the last, I was talking about like this kind of zone of negotiation between the street and the building. Now you have to look to the left. There's like the bike storage, but there's also I don't have a picture now, but there's like a fridge. And it's actually a public fridge where people who have like leftover foods that are still good bring their food there, and other people who don't have money and need food can pick it up. And actually this fridge has become a little meeting point in the neighborhood where people meet and chat and exchange stuff. I mean, it's a very small thing. It's just a fridge, but there's a group who maintains the fridge, who like throws out rotten things, who cleans it from time to time. And like there's kind of around this fridge, like a whole kind of community has developed. And this is like what I mean about scale. I think it's really also good to think about scaling up these projects, but sometimes it's very small scale. This also makes a huge difference, like because these kind of things can facilitate like community building and networks very easily. This is another project. This is like also very interesting. It's a former office building which was used by the secret police of East Germany, the Stasi. And it's in the middle of this block of the Stasi block. It's even called like this, in Berlin-Lichtenberg. And the group managed to buy this building for quite a good price. And this building already had the room socialism, you know. in this building, every room was the same size. And yeah, this is an article in one of the biggest German newspapers about this project. And here also, actually with very minimum interventions, we managed to develop a variety of different floor plans. And they really ended up in like very cheap rent, under €5, like I think it's €4.30 or something per square meters, which is for now like the market situation in Berlin is like amazingly cheap.
1 second.
Yeah.
We have to say the house was owned by the state before,
Yes.
so and we just could be, and that was sold in the by highest bid. We could make the highest bid because of also how we just developed the house. So it's more cheap than a normal real estate developer would develop it, you know. So
Yes.
that was our chance to get the house.
So, so in this building we have like from like 1-room studio apartments to like massive flat. I think with like the biggest one is like with 12 rooms. Like a huge variety of flat types. And I just flip through, like this is in black, you see the original floor plan, and like with yellow and red is like the interventions that we did to create this, just to get an idea how really quite minimal it is. And this, like on the left, you see like how we found it, and to the right, you see how it is now. We also did like a minimum insulation according to the law, because we figured out like to abide the law, it is enough if we insulate 2 stories. And so, and kind of we tried to apply this in like also like in an ornamental way. Actually, I would like also here like to speak about thresholds, because actually like this building is to the streets. It's like very closed, you know. I mean, you don't really have an idea that you can actually access it. You access it through like this very narrow gap between 2 walls, and there is also like a new door that we introduced. And actually, this building is like an area where you also actually have a problem with neo-Nazis, especially if you're this kind of alternative project. But still, somehow the project wants to be open to public, and also this. I mean, it's still like this project is still in process, and they haven't realized many things that were planned yet. But they're like step by step, they're realizing it. And in the ground floor, they have a lot of offices for political initiatives, and also like like giving advice to unemployed people or like to refugee support groups, and also supporting refugees. And in that block, there's also a kind of refugee, I would say, like a lager situation, and they have an internet cafe in that building where the people from the refugee center can come and use like the free internet. Yeah, this is a new door. And also like with the landscaping, yeah, this was like just complete concrete, and the group just started by like just to transform this concrete square and build like a playground for children, which is also open to the public. Yeah, this is the courtyard side. And here you see the party. And actually, like, yeah, there's like one detail that is, I have to jump back actually to show you, that hasn't been realized by the group yet, but actually we still want them to realize it. You see like the 19, and actually we want to, like, the idea was like to extend this insulation with a light box that could also work as like a kind of tool of communication, like when there's like public events or anything, like, you know, that's like kind of like an old advertisement board in a cinema, like a light box you can use with letters, or you can put up posters, basically to also like facilitate this kind of threshold between public and private, and between like inner security, but also like opening up to the general public and offering resources to the public. Okay, now I jumped. This is not a project that we did. It's by someone else, but actually like just to show a little bit the variety of the syndicate.
Hamburg.
Yeah, this is in Hamburg. And this is very interesting because it is the first project in the syndicate network that is, which is like no living at all, but just commercial projects. It's basically a house for like offices and workshops. here you can see, because in Hamburg you also have to, like, it's not only the problem with like the soaring real estate prices, they not only drive out the poorer part of the population for living, but it also drives out a lot of kind of small businesses from the city, which is actually also like now in Berlin a big problem, and actually in Hamburg even more so. And to the west of Hamburg, in like Altona and Ottensen, you had a lot of these kind of traditional kind of courtyard factories where small businesses could locate, but they're like also driven out. And so like a group of small businesses got together and said, like, we have to do something about the situation. And they were able to manage to buy this piece of land and to build like a house with workshop. There's like carpenters in there, and like I think a music instrument maker, but also lawyers, but also office of architects. So just to give you an idea. And this project is not realized yet, but this like back to Berlin is only one slide, but I want to also mention this. This is also like kind of out of our office network. This is a former school, which is kind of like in this kind of futuristic 70s space age aesthetics. And it's like closed for already more than 10 years. And basically we were like kind of lobbying the local council that actually like on the site we need to make a this should be turned into a housing project in a social center. And after a long process, we basically now, or the people who were negotiating with the council, managed to convince them that it may be a good project, and they will, together with a public housing corporation, develop this site, and also through this corporation, they will manage to save that school from being demolished.
Okay. We have to be fast now, so I just try to make it short. We have to go back to the history, because we also want to motivate you to make something, and just going back to our core to say, okay, we started very slow, and so we just we had a history situation, you know, about squatting and movements against destroying city.
Destroying affordable housing.
Destroying affordable housing. Also, for somebody mentioned, we just
the motorway.
The motorway, yeah. Also was a big point in Berlin-Kreuzberg.
Yeah.
So there was this movement, and the syndicate is coming out of this movement of squatting. And this picture we wanted to show you to say, okay, I think maybe that's the point where ideas develop. Some people are sitting together and thinking about what we can change, and it's not about maybe this guy's where to start point, I don't know, but so and that's not from the syndicate, but it shows it, it's German. We have to excuse, but maybe explain it a little bit how they think. You know, they thought about, okay, if we're making the house, what we want to develop, what we want to rebuild, how we support the city with an own contribution of our development, and especially the part of the city where our project is. So they're thinking about this not only for their own project, and that's very important for our network also. That's not our project, but it's also it's Luisenstadt AG. It's one cooperative that developed in this struggle of city destroying, renters struggles. They just go some steps more. They're thinking about concept for their block. They're just building up a network in their block, and with the goal of, or with the Ergebnis.
Result.
With the result of self-organization, you know, and you see the steps there, the stairs, like the years they develop something, you know, and this is still existing. It has still a block concept, and we just choose this to say, okay, there's a development behind. That's
like kind of what in the beginning were squatters, and then become like real estate developers, but with like a social goal.
Yes. Okay, for our syndicate, we say, okay, there was the Grether Baukooperative. They just also wanted to, like the block concept, saying, okay, there is an old fabric. We want to keep it and not tear down it. So they
Factory.
start the factory, yeah. And so they started to make an association. They had a general meeting then and a debate of Solidarity Fund in the 80s. And later on they get their project, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And then starting with discussing the Mietshäusersyndikat in 92. Then the name changed to Mietshäusersyndikat. The principles for the Solidarity Fund are made in 1994. Yeah, the foundation of the Syndicate Limited. So it's also a process, and you can see how it developed over the years. So starting in Freiburg there.
Yeah, something that's like kind of started with squatting, like developing into like a really kind of expanding network, generating like a lot of knowledge projects, and
reorganization of the Solidarity Fund was also one point. You know.
And now yes,
That's,
the
what is
113 houses. And okay, finally we also want to talk about some challenges. How much time we have? None. Okay. Okay, we jump through this very quickly.
Yes, okay.
Okay, one, we're not going to talk about this, but it's definitely a challenge. Like the growing of the syndicate is also a challenge because like when you grow, you also have to kind of reconceptualize at some point your structures. Like because like the general meetings become bigger and bigger. So this is an inner challenge. And outer challenge, one, there's also a lot of rural syndicate projects, but there the challenge is that actually like the infrastructure in the rural areas it gets also like dismantled, like railway lines get closed down, bus lines get cut down, schools are being closed. So it's a real problem actually, like rural areas in some part of Germany are really fucked. So, but these are also like projects where like initiatives from the syndicate network want to go and build up projects. So this is, but the other main issue, it's also mainly in the big cities, is like the kind of escalating real estate markets, which is like a problem in the most big growing cities. Because I talked about affordability, even if like the project 100% loan financed, basically the loans have to be paid back, and even with low interest rates, like the higher the acquisition price of a piece of land is, the higher the rent will be, and there's like a threshold where it's not affordable anymore. So what the problem in Berlin is, there's a lot of like expensive developments, and this yellow is like one side in public ownership that we fight, like that is not being privatized, but like giving to like initiatives and public housing corporations to develop like affordable housing there. But there's also like this situation causes like the gap between the income of the people and the real estate market, of course, a lot of protest. And there's also like kind of international capital also flowing in like what used to be like kind of public housing, which has been privatized in Berlin. There's like speculation not only with luxury housing, but also with like the kind of low income housing. So there's like a group in Berlin that kind of built this protest camp, and they said like, okay, we stay here, we build a house until like our rents will lower. And this is the rent monster in blue. And people make meetings on the streets, and they kind of chase investors and kind of engage with the media and organize demonstrations. And I hope this will help us for our outlook.
Yeah. Do you have a suggestion for our work? We have to say we are a niche. That's a niche. It's not for bright distribution. So we say, okay, we want both. We want a combination of self-determined living and a wide distribution that we have still in our communal housing. That's what we just say, okay, maybe it's a perspective to discuss, to get into the system, you know, saying, okay, a combination of both, because the communal housing is also really paternalistic model, you know, like, okay, you get your flat, but I am your renter, you know, your landlord, you know, and they have this attitude still, so we want to change it. And this is one workshop with the university about discussing self-organized projects, not only the Syndicate.
Yes.
And for tomorrow, we just said, okay, we have some inputs for tomorrow. Our corporate students, again, saying, okay, if you're thinking about developing a system, it's about checks and balance in different kinds. concerning privatization, checks and balance, individual and common interest, about the discussion about project autonomy, also thinking about solidarity transfer, having an open and expansive network and not just closing and making a closed shop. It's also about political commitment, how to transfer these principles into other sectors and locations. And for us, it reminds us at the core to the core principles of cooperatives, not how we have the legal forms in the different lands, about the core principles of the idea of cooperatives, like the facilitation, you mentioned it before. It's about permanent provision of affordable housing. It's not about profit. There is some kind of identity principle, saying, okay, two opposing roles are getting together, and they are united. In our case, saying, okay, the landlord equals the tenant. So the democracy principle is also in your flyer for the event, saying, okay, one person, one voice. We just have explained we have some kind of consensus principle, added diverse possibilities of joining the network, and some kind of self-organization, and also the spirit of cooperatives, saying there is a solidarity redistribution. And we want to support new projects and not only having our closed shops. And that's what we want to give you for tomorrow for the discussion. And that's it, I think.
Thank you.